Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. The Cabin. This awesome story is written by crypticwander. It was 6 hours or so since his last stop at the gas station, but finally Ted arrived. He had been working and saving for a couple of years for this vacation, and he stepped out of his car with a grin. He was finally home. Not his real home, mind you, but his real home was back in South Dakota. Here in Maine, just a little north of Sebago Lake, was where he felt most comfortable. He spent many summers here in his childhood. The cabin, which was leased out by his father's landlord, Charlie, was a 2-story beauty set in the woods roughly 10 minutes away from the sandy shore of the water. Grabbing most of his stuff from the trunk of his car, he walked up to the heavy wooden door. Pushing the keys into the hole, he bumped hard into the unmoving portal. The continuous heating and cooling of the old cabin throughout the seasons must have caused the door to stick. So he pushed harder, and it still did not budge. Turning the key back and forth a few times, he finally booted it in with a hard and a resounding crack. He stepped into the musty living room to see that the door had been barred from the inside. This concerned him. He went through the house, turning lights on, looking for anyone who might be in there. The living room and the kitchen were spotless, and the hallways leading to the up and down stairs were undisturbed as well. He opened the door to the basement and pulled the string to the light at the top of the stairs. Nothing. As he got out his phone to turn the flashlight app on, he glanced down into the dark void. A shiver ran down his spine. It looked threatening and sad. The light switched on and he slowly went down the creaking wooden steps. Each step was like the bass to the solo his heart was giving. Hot sweat beaded down his cool face as he reached the landing. Snap! Something moved and made him nearly jump out of his skin. He reached for the light to the left of the steps and clicked on, painting the concrete walls and earthen floor with light. Ted looked where the noise had come from. On the wall under the stairs was some gardening equipment, and a rake had fallen over. Feeling incredibly foolish, yet relieved, he looked around. There was lots of old hunting and trapping gear which made sense, being in the middle of nature. On the right side of the basement, where the dirt had not been packed down, was some uninteresting luggage, and to the front, where the stairs came down, was just a washing machine and dryer. Satisfied, he turned off the light and went back upstairs. Reaching the top, he shut the door, letting the rest of his fear run out of him. He checked the bathroom and downstairs bedroom and found nothing. The top floor was 2 bedrooms, which both were spotless and not even that musty. Ted wasn't one to dwell on things, so he just left it to the owner, being an eccentric. Feeling hungry, he went back down to his car. The cooler in the back seat had a 6-pack of PBR, a personal favourite from his teen years, and stuff for sandwiches. Closing the door, he took a moment to admire the light as the sun began to set. The trees in the surrounding woods were bright orange, with a contrasting darkness, both blending together to make everything look like it was on fire. Thinking back to his childhood there, he remembered his dad dropping the first pile of logs into the pit fire to the south of the cabin. With a clunk, he'd stand up straight, put his hand on Ted and proclaim, "Anything can happen. From elves visiting from the trees to the spirits of the Saco River coming to enact the curse," he'd say with a chuckle. Ted would feel spooky excitement run through the rest of the night. And the years hadn't taken that, he sighed, and went back inside. He walked into the kitchen, cooler in hand, and stopped. The fridge and all of the cupboards were open, and then the smell hit him. It was like rotting flesh, and he almost threw up. Moving towards the fridge, he saw the shelves had old food in them. How old it was, or even what it was, or even what it had been, he didn't know. Wait, were all the doors open when he walked in before? Surely he would have noticed, at least of all, that horrid stench. He grabbed some garbage bags from under the sink and began to dump the fridge contents. He couldn't believe the old man would just leave this stuff here for so long. But he had to be pushing 70 now, and probably didn't give a rat's ass. After about 20 minutes of cleaning the fridge, the smell died down, and he could finally stomach a sandwich. He made his favourite, triple roast beef and cheese, and sat down on the couch to listen to the radio. Opening a beer, he flipped it on, hearing nothing but static. He turned past a few scratchy country stations and finally found one with a classic rock. AC/DC's Back in Black was playing when he downed his beer in two, and then got up for another one. Coming back to the living room, the station cut out. It was nothing but static at first, but then he could clearly hear a girl's voice. She sounded like she was crying or pleading, and he made out the words, "I'm so hungry." The static cut back in again, and the song, Bad to the Bone, by George Thorogood, took its place. Ted was beginning to get nervous. He ultimately chalked it up to a strange coincidence, but with the sun barely visible now and being by himself, his imagination was starting to get to him. He took a deep breath and a deep swig, and went through his bags to get the Sudoku he did when he had free time. He rifled through it, but realised it was in his passenger seat. He got up and opened the door, and his heart leapt from his chest as he rushed back behind the door. In his front seat was a silhouette, just staring at him. He didn't get a great look, but it was definitely a woman with dark hair. He looked next to the wood stove and grabbed the small metal shovel on its wooden holder. Slowly opening the front door, he looked again to the empty car. He knew there was someone in there just a second ago. He wasn't sure what was going on, but he didn't feel comfortable here anymore. He packed his belongings back into his bag, and with a careful glance he went out to his car. He put his stuff in the back seat and got in to start it. Only his fingers didn't meet his keys. He looked over, and sure enough, they were not in the ignition. "Fuck!" he yelled in frustration. Now he would have to get a hold of the police and report it. Some vacation. He pulled the phone out of his pocket and went to dial the number for the local police when he noticed the smell. It smelled exactly like that rancid food he threw away. Through the sounds of his own gagging, he heard something else from behind him, a funny sort of cracking noise, like that of a fistful of grass being pulled from the ground. He looked in his rearview mirror and saw something that made his skin crawl. It was the woman again. Her dark hair, about shoulder length, glistened with something moist. One of her eyes hung limply from her dark, bloody socket. Chunks of meat were missing from her face, and where her jaw should have been, a gaping hole ripped from her cheeks down her neck, and her tongue flapped nauseatingly as if she was trying to speak. His scream tore through his throat in a pitch he didn't know he could hit, and in a flurry of motion he opened the door, ran back inside and slammed the door shut. The whole thing felt like somebody was moving his body for him, and he was watching it all unfold from outside of himself. Slowly he slumped to the ground against the door, his breathing erratic and his hands around his knees, as he felt like he was gaining control again. His entire body erupted in shakes. He began to get a hold of himself and started to stand up. The radio was playing something by Aerosmith, and he went to the couch. Ted pulled out his cell phone to call the police and noticed it was out of service. "Figures," he said as he set it on the end table. He got up and locked the door, putting a chair against the knob for good measure. He made sure all the windows were shut and locked, and went upstairs to his old bedroom. He wasn't going to go to sleep, not after that, but being locked in the room upstairs made him feel a lot better about the whole thing. He kept the light on as he got into bed. There was another radio up here, and he tuned it on to the nightly talk show. They were going on about football, not that he cared what the subject was. The voices just made him feel a hell of a lot better. After a while of his mind still racing, he began to grow bored, which turned into curiosity. His instincts knew better, but he looked out of the window into the darkness anyway. The moon didn't provide a lot of light, and he had to squint for a few minutes. The trees swayed gently back and forth, and his car was empty. He saw nothing in the still night, and this made him feel better. Maybe the whole thing was just nonsense. He still couldn't talk himself out of what he saw, but it had been quiet for a while. Maybe he was just imagining it. He trailed off in his mind as he saw a figure emerge from the woods. It was slim, and when it walked, it was in a jerking motion like it had no feet, and it just gazed up at him. Ted reared away from the window and thought briefly about going down to get something as a weapon, but there was no way in hell he was going to leave this room. He was just going to sit up here and wait for the morning, then run to the nearest house, he thought as the power went out. His pulse raced as the dark and quiet set in, almost as perfect as the woods during the magic hour. He swallowed dryly in his throat as he listened to everything coming from downstairs or outside. Tick, 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 he heard. The sound of something dripping, coming from the bathroom to the left of the room he was in, and the door was slightly open. He turned on his flashlight and slowly turned to it. He opened the door all the way and the light revealed the tub. The shower curtain was closed. He could hear the steady ticking coming from it. He moved forward to push the curtain aside, then thought better of it, and pulled away as the curtain ripped open from the other side. There was an old fat man in the full tub full of water, looking at Ted with hatred. That was when Ted recognised him as the landlord, Charlie. The swollen body rose out of the water and moved in an unnatural way towards him, falling as he reached a large leg over the edge of the tub. Ted backed out of there and out of the bedroom to the downstairs, which he nearly tumbled down as the lights came back on. He grabbed a fire poker and sat on the couch shivering, just waiting for the waterlogged corpse to come down after him. Nothing came. He crept back up the stairs, moving slowly, ready to bash it in with his iron weapon. At the top, he looked in the bathroom. There was nothing, but he still heard the tick, tick, tick coming from the bathroom. Slowly he moved to open the door. Water flooded the ground, but the curtain was shut. He moved the tip to the fabric and swung it open to reveal nothing. There was no body or even any water. The faucet was just open enough to allow a stream of droplets to tap the drain. He made his way back down the stairs to the couch. I'm going crazy, he thought. I'm losing my mind. He gently rocked himself back and forth when he heard the door creak open. Suddenly he remembered he left the back door unlocked. He jerked his head down the hall and saw the dark shape of the woman. He could hear her joints crackle with every move she made, and she made a disturbing noise from the hole in her neck, her flailing tongue punctuating every noise with a moist smack. Every step let out a sickening thud from her feetless legs, and she was coming closer. Panicked, he turned to run out the front door, only to find it blocked by the former landlord. With an angry sneer, he charged at Ted. Ted stabbed the poker into his stomach with a wet squelch, and like a hole in a barrel, dark water began pouring out. Ted's ways out were blocked. He ran to the basement stairs, locking the door behind him. He quickly made his way to the bottom and turned on the light. He was now royally screwed and weaponless. He went over to the hunting equipment. Most of it was just basic supplies, nothing of any real use. But now he noticed the rust colour on the bear traps that were also on the earthen floor. The wavy patterns looked like it made its way back to the darker parts of the ground. He followed it, and as he bent down, that's when he heard a creak from the other side of the room. His head moved over to the lower outside window from the back. It was open, and pushing through it was the jawless woman. She crawled through and fell limply to the floor, unmoving for a moment. Then, in a grotesque display of rigor mortis consumed limbs, she stood up and walked over to him. He had nowhere to go. Above, he could hear Charlie slamming against the door, demanding entrance. Slowly, the horror set in as she was now 5 feet away. Her hands came up and he closed his eyes, letting out a whimper, knowing this was the end. Cold, stiff hands made their way onto either side of his face, and he saw a vision in his head. A woman was being held in the basement. She tried to run, so someone broke her ankles using bear traps, and then cut them off with a saw when they became infected. Then the scene changed to her begging for food. She had not eaten in a while and was looking gaunt. A man was tired of hearing this, so he ripped her jaw right from her, killing her. The man was Charlie. Suddenly he snapped back to reality, and the woman was nowhere to be seen. Banging could still be heard from above, and he looked down at the uneven earth. Grabbing a shovel, he began to dig. The banging became even more desperate, as only about a foot down he saw the decaying face of the woman. All at once, the banging stopped. He finally lost his supper from the smell, and he went hesitantly to the top. Charlie was nowhere to be seen. All was quiet. He ran to the front door and threw it open. The cold, fresh air felt amazing, and as he reached in his pocket for his phone, he found his keys. Not thinking twice, he got in his car and drove away. The next day, police and a crime scene unit were all over the property. They determined Charlie had kidnapped a young woman named Carol Burns. He kept her down there as a sex slave, and eventually, when he got bored of her, he found new interesting ways to torture her, eventually killing her. They weren't sure how Charlie's body made its way into the well in the back of the house, so it was labelled as suicide. Ted wasn't found guilty of anything other than being a loony to most of the officers he talked to. They marked the case closed, and all loose ends had been tied, all except the small round bloody marks leading from the back door to the basement. Don't forget, if you enjoyed that story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they really would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap the notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Oh, and don't forget to share the video far and wide. This will all help with YouTube's algorithm and will help to promote this channel more. And don't forget to check out the merch store. The link will be in the description and also in the video thumbnail. And if you would like an honourable mention, send in a snapshot of yourself with your purchase and I'll feature it in one of the videos. I now have my very own subreddit community where you can submit any stories you've written. You can submit your stories or encounters either there or send them to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. All the links are below. I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit, and you'll also find me on Discord. If you would like to support this channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost. Again, that will also be below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.